Once upon a time, in a quiet village surrounded by fields of green and golden crops, there lived an old farmer named George. George was a man of few words, but everyone in the village knew him for his work ethic and the pride he took in his farm. From early morning until the sun disappeared behind the hills, George was out on his land, planting, watering, harvesting, and doing everything to keep the farm running smoothly. It wasn't easy, but George loved the land that had been passed down through generations. This farm was not only his livelihood, it was a piece of his family's legacy. George had a son named Sam. Sam was a different story. While George had dedicated his life to working the land, Sam had always shied away from hard work. The villagers often saw him lazing around under the shade of a big tree, watching the clouds drift by, or daydreaming about a life of luxury and ease. Sam loved the idea of wealth, but disliked the effort needed to earn it. He often thought, "Why work so hard like father? Life should be easy and enjoyable." As George grew older, he started to worry about the future of his farm. He had hoped that one day Sam would take over the land, but seeing Sam's lack of interest, he felt uncertain. "What will happen to the farm after I'm gone?" George thought to himself. "Sam has no idea how to work the land or take care of it." George lay awake at night, troubled by thoughts of what would happen to the family's legacy. He wished Sam understood that the real joy of life was not in avoiding work, but in finding meaning in it. One evening, as George sat by the fire, an idea came to him. The next morning, he called Sam and sat him down. Sam, still sleepy-eyed, wondered what his father wanted to talk about. "Sam," George said, looking his son in the eye, "I need to tell you a secret about this land." Sam's ears perked up. George never spoke of secrets, and Sam felt a twinge of curiosity. "What is it, Father?" he asked. "There is a treasure buried somewhere on this land," George said slowly, "but I can't remember where. It's been hidden for many years, passed down by our ancestors. They left it here for us, but it's buried deep, and it takes effort to uncover." George watched Sam's face light up at the mention of treasure. He could see that the idea of hidden riches had captured his son's attention. Sam's mind raced with excitement. He imagined gold coins, sparkling jewels, and perhaps even priceless artifacts lying somewhere beneath their feet. For the first time, Sam was genuinely interested in something on the farm. "A treasure?" he repeated, his eyes wide with excitement. "Yes," George replied, "but finding it won't be easy. It's buried deep, and you'll need to work the land to uncover it. You might have to dig all around, but if you're persistent, you'll eventually find it." Without another word, George left Sam to his thoughts. He knew that if he had told Sam directly to work the land, it would have been a waste of breath. But the thought of treasure was different. He hoped this would finally motivate his son to take responsibility for the farm. The next day, Sam woke up early, something he hadn't done in years. He put on his old clothes, picked up a spade, and walked out into the fields. The villagers watched in surprise as Sam started digging in the middle of a field. Some laughed, others whispered, and a few even approached him to ask what he was doing. "I'm digging for treasure," Sam told them proudly, brushing off their laughter. At first, Sam dug eagerly, imagining that he'd strike gold within a few hours. But as the day wore on, the hard ground, rocks, and roots made the work exhausting. By midday, his arms were aching, and he was drenched in sweat. He felt blisters forming on his hands, and he muttered under his breath, wondering why the treasure wasn't showing up quickly. However, the thought of hidden riches kept him going, and he decided to try again the next day. The following morning, Sam picked a different spot and started digging again. The sun was hot, and he could feel the heat bearing down on him, but he kept going. Day after day, Sam dug in different parts of the farm, never finding any sign of treasure. Some days, he was tempted to give up, but he couldn't shake the idea that just one more dig might reveal his prize. With each day that passed, his muscles grew stronger, and he got a little more skilled with his tools. Meanwhile, George watched from a distance, hiding his smile. He could see that the fields, which hadn't been dug so thoroughly in years, were starting to look more fertile. The soil was turning rich and dark, perfect for planting new seeds. But George kept his distance, letting Sam continue his treasure hunt without interference. One day, As Sam was digging near the edge of the field, he unearthed an old root. Frustrated, he sat down, wiping the sweat from his brow. All this hard work, and still no treasure, he grumbled. But then he noticed something different. The soil around him was softer, and he realized that crops could grow well there. For a moment, he felt an odd sense of satisfaction. The work had been tough, but it was rewarding in a way he hadn't expected. Gradually, the barren fields started to flourish. Plants began to sprout where Sam had dug, and the once neglected land became lush and green. Without realizing it, Sam was learning to care for the farm. His friends teased him, saying, "The lazy Sam is now working as hard as his father." But Sam was no longer embarrassed. He was beginning to understand why his father loved the farm so much. Months passed, and soon the fields were yielding a bountiful harvest. The crops were healthier than ever, and the farm had become a sight of beauty and abundance. Sam looked around one evening, seeing the golden fields stretching as far as his eyes could see. For the first time, he felt proud of what he had achieved. One evening, George came up to Sam, who was resting after a long day. "You've done well, Sam," he said, his voice filled with warmth. Sam looked at his father, a little embarrassed. "I didn't find any treasure, Father. I dug all over, but there was nothing but rocks and roots," he said, almost disappointed. George smiled, placing a hand on Sam's shoulder. "Ah, but you did find the treasure, Sam," he replied. "Look around you. This land, now full of life and promise. That's the treasure. Hard work, patience, and care have turned this farm into something more valuable than gold. The true treasure is in the labor, in the lessons you've learned, and in the pride of seeing the fruits of your work." Sam looked out over the fields, feeling a wave of realization wash over him. He understood now that his father's lesson was about more than just treasure. It was about valuing what you have and putting in effort to make it thrive. Sam felt a newfound respect for his father and a deep connection to the land. From that day on, Sam took charge of the farm with dedication and responsibility. He no longer dreamed of an easy life, but found joy in his work, understanding the legacy his father had passed down to him. And as George watched his son work with pride, he knew that the farm and its true treasure was in good hands.